Back when I started drawing around 10 years ago, I was a traditional only artist. However, when I went to university to do animation, I transitioned from a traditional artist to a digital artist. And for the past 5 years, I have been doing solely digital art. However, I've come to the conclusion recently that digital art has been holding me back in many aspects. Now I want to discuss with you guys why I decided to give up digital art and go back to traditional art. Okay, first of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, I am aware the video is upside down. Basically, my arm clamp that I usually put my camera on broke. It broke on me right before I started making this video, and I thought I had a solution. I put the camera at the top end of the artwork and I was planning to just flip it. I didn't really think it through though, obviously, because when I flipped it, it looked like this. But luckily this video is mostly about the topic and not the artwork. But yeah, I need to talk about that because that was I thought I was being so clever and I really wasn't. Now, with that out of the way, let's discuss the topic. Why am I going back to traditional art? I do want to put a little disclaimer here that I think digital art is a really amazing art form. I think it takes a lot of skill. When I was learning digital art for the first time, it was so hard, and I'm constantly in awe of the things people do with digital art and how they manage to create objects and the way they go about things. I think it's great, and I do not think digital art is any lesser than traditional art. It requires just as much skill. However, in the recent years, I have noticed it has been holding me back in many ways. First, let's start with why I got into digital art in the first place. When I was doing traditional art all those years ago, when I was first starting my art journey, I actually really wanted to get into digital art. I was constantly enamored by the things people were able to do, by the possibilities that digital art brings to artists. Like, you have everything at your fingertips. Who wouldn't want that? And when I started doing an animation course, it was the perfect time for me to really get into it. Beforehand, I tried digital art and I really just couldn't get into it. It's so hard to get used to. It's so different from traditional art. The animation really pushed me out of my comfort zone. It really helped me to kind of, I guess, not come up with the excuses. I had to learn digital art to do 2D animation because I wasn't doing it on paper. So I didn't really have a choice but to learn it, which I saw as a good thing and I still see as a good thing. And then when my animation course ended, I opened a small business where I was making products, and I made all of my products digitally because it was quicker and easier and more familiar at that point to me than traditional art was. However, for the past couple of years, I feel like my art hasn't been improving in the ways I would want it to. As someone who is coming up to almost 10 years of being an artist, I look at my artwork and I don't really feel like I see 10 years of skills there. It kind of feels like for a while my art and my growth has been stunted a little bit, and I have to ask myself why. And partly, yes, it is because I had a small business and I was focusing on creating products over just making art and learning and practicing, so that is a fault of mine as well. But I really don't think digital art helped me in a lot of ways. There are many reasons why I'm going back to traditional art, but let's start with the basics. I miss the joy of getting new art supplies. That is a big one for me. For the longest time, all of my traditional art supplies have been hidden away in the darkest corners of my wardrobe, and it's only recently that I've brought them out and I've gotten marker storage and paint storage, and I've had them on display, and it's really brought back my creativity in ways I didn't expect. And I feel like this leads into one of my next points, is I kind of miss practicing with the different mediums, whereas with digital art I kind of just use the same brushes over and over again. But a fun thing about me is I actually don't like coloring digitally. I've never really been too good at it. It's always very basic. I feel like I just prefer the texture that I can get with traditional artwork, and I know you can get different brushes for digital art. However, I've just never really got into them. I've never found brushes that I really liked. I feel like they always kind of misbehave and it never turns out the way I want. I really like the mess that comes with the different mediums and the challenges and even the textures that you can create with traditional art. And I think, again, this leads into my next point, whereas there feels like there's not many stakes with digital art, and I feel like that's why I got into a comfort zone. Again, don't get me wrong, digital art is not easy. It took me so long to actually learn, but I feel like because I have the undo button at my fingertips, I was able to rush things, not think things through, not take my time, not really think about it and plan it out. I just slap colors on a canvas, and if I wasn't happy, I could just change it instantly. And while that is awesome, it also feels like it kind of stopped me from thinking about what I was creating. Instead, I was just going into artwork without taking much consideration for what I was actually making. Whereas with traditional art, I find myself a lot of the time really thinking about what I'm doing, creating thumbnails, testing different colors to see what works. And I feel like that way back when I used to do traditional art, that helped me quite a lot to grow and to learn what works and what doesn't. It feels like with traditional art, I actually think about what I'm doing, and with digital art, I kind of just do it. But for me, it just felt like I was getting a little lazy because everything was suddenly so easy to me. At least easier than it was when I was doing traditional art in the first place. In digital art, it feels like it doesn't matter if you make a mistake because you can just undo it. But with traditional art, if we go back to my point from before, I used to plan it out a lot more. I used to think about it a lot more because if you made a mistake, there wasn't a lot of ways you could get around it. And I kind of liked having that challenge of, oh no, that line went wrong. How can I fix this? What can I do? Maybe I should turn it into something. Maybe I should cover it up. Maybe we can experiment here and try something new. I kind of miss having those challenges. With traditional art, you have no choice but to be patient and enjoy the process. There are no paint bucket tools that you can just fill in everything. There is no undo button. You have to be careful and precise with each line. It teaches your hand to be steadier. It teaches you how to be patient and enjoy the journey and enjoy the process of creating the art. Whereas digital art for me, I feel like took away all of that. And I found myself not enjoying the process as much because a lot of it was just filling things in with the paint bucket tool or undoing the same line over and over again until it was absolutely perfect, because I had that option with digital art. Another thing that when I asked myself, why did I really want to go back to traditional art? What was it about digital art that was bugging me? I realized one of the big issues I have with digital art is not having a sketchbook. I miss having sketchbooks that I can look back at. Like when you get to the end of a sketchbook, I love going back to the beginning of that sketchbook to see what I did, how far my art has come in this one little book. I love having boxes upon boxes of just my artwork, physical copies of the original artwork that I did. And I know I could print off my digital copies and put them in a folder, but I feel like it's just not the same for me. I really like having dedicated sketchbooks for all of my art. I've got some really tiny little A5 sketchbooks that I used for Inktober. I've got some really big A3 sketchbooks that I did when I was first starting out and I was trying to do some big pieces. I really like getting a new sketchbook and just going wild with it. Each sketchbook feels different. Whereas with digital art, I feel like I'd finish a piece of artwork and it would just go, you know, I wouldn't really go back to it. I wouldn't really look at it. I feel like I wouldn't go back to it and think about how, hey, remember when I drew this and I accidentally used the wrong color and now there's that little mark there forever. I just kind of miss that. I do have all of my artwork on USB sticks. They just don't feel as accessible as traditional art does, like having a sketchbook right in front of you versus having a USB stick that you've got to open. I don't know. It just feels not right for me. I just really enjoy getting new sketchbooks and having them right in front of me all the time, right at my fingertips. I could go back and look at the first page anytime I want. It just feels a little more creative for me. Digital art has both made me impatient and made me a perfectionist in the worst ways. I can undo as much as I please, as many times as I want. I feel like because of that, I've both lost my patience, kind of has made me a little bit of a perfectionist, and rather than accepting things or trying to overcome things and having those challenges in front of me, it's kind of just gotten a little too easy. And I feel like it's held back my artwork for quite a while. Could be a lot better if I hadn't have been avoiding those challenges to begin with. But I also don't want you guys to get this wrong, because I still like digital art. I still plan to do digital art in the future. My plan is to have a little bit of a mix of both worlds. If I'm doing big art pieces, what I plan to do is do the sketching digitally, because I don't like traditional sketching, but I also don't like digital coloring. So why not just have the best of both worlds? Do the sketch digitally and then color it traditionally. Print it out, trace it over, put it in my sketchbook. It solves all of my problems. However, I also do want to do basic sketching traditionally when I'm doing practices and anatomy work. I want to do that traditionally because I still want to teach myself that not everything has to be perfect, just accepting mistakes when they happen, not being too picky with every single line like I have become. It never really occurred to me that I could be both a digital artist and a traditional artist. I feel like people often say you're either one or the other, but why can't I be both? Why can't I enjoy making digital comics but also in my free time enjoy making traditional art pieces like with watercolor and alcohol markers? Art is meant to be enjoyed, but I also think that to be the best artist I can be, I need to step out my comfort zone again. Digital art has created this little cocoon for me where I feel like nothing really matters because I can warp and shape objects to my will, because I can use a paint bucket tool to fill in areas when I'm feeling lazy. And while all those things are amazing tools to have, I think I've been relying on them a little too much. I think doing this is going to solve a lot of the issues that I have when it comes to art. Again, I don't want it to come across like I'm bashing digital artists because I am a digital artist. I do like doing digital art, but I think I just got a little too comfortable, and for the longest time, I haven't really seen my art grow. I feel like I haven't really seen my art get any better. Like if I go back 2 years, my art feels almost identical to what it looked like 2 years ago because I haven't really been using my skills in the way I should be. I haven't really been pushing myself. I'd be really interested to know if other artists have these feelings. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, please let me know. Like I said, I've never really heard anyone talking about this, which is why I wanted to do it, because I think it's an important topic. At the very least, it's an interesting topic. I'm very excited to see what I will be able to produce now. I'm excited to see over the next year or two, hopefully that my art will change. Maybe later on I could make a video talking about if I've seen improvements, if doing traditional art again has helped me become a better artist. My aim is to create a balance of this is challenging, but I'm also having fun with it. I'm very excited to see where this will take my art and if it will help me at all to see improvements in my art, because I haven't seen improvements for a very, very long time. Before we go, just a little bit on this art piece if you're interested. So this is actually my Dungeons and Dragons character. This was a digital sketch that I decided to put into my sketchbook and color it using alcohol markers. Her name is Victoria. She is a rogue drow elf because I'm a very basic player. She's the first Dungeons and Dragons character I ever had, so I feel like that's pretty standard for a lot of people. People usually make rogues and drow elves when they first start out, but I love her. She's very much like a Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender kind of character. People think she's edgy, but she's really just bad at socializing, which is great for me because I'm also bad at socializing, so it works really well. I'm able to play her quite efficiently. So basically I printed out the digital art print, I traced over it using a inky line art pen, and then I just went in and I tried to remember how I used to do traditional art. It was a lot of experimenting, blending. One of the things I realized when doing this piece was how privileged I have been for so many years. Because with digital art, I feel like you don't think about the fact that you've got the entire color wheel at your hands. You can get any shade, any color you need, muted, vibrant, whatever, all at your fingertips. And doing this piece, there was so many times where I was like, okay, that's not the right shade of purple, that's not the right shade of gray, this color isn't the right shade that I want for the shadows. So it was a lot of experimenting, but I actually really had fun with those challenges. I had a lot of fun testing to see what would work and what wasn't working. I went in with the shadows first and then kind of blended them out a little bit. Maybe I won't go for such a blended look in the future, but I actually really like how it came out. There was a couple of times where the ink ended up going over the line art, so it got a little messy in some parts, but I actually think that's a product of doing digital art for so long, because usually I just rush it, and if it goes over the lines, it doesn't matter because I can erase it, no problem. Whereas I was doing this, being a bit careless, and I was like, oh crap, I've gone outside the lines, now it's like this, what am I going to do to fix it? So it kind of taught me a lot of lessons, and I had to kind of overcome those challenges without the use of an undo button, which I really enjoyed. And honestly, having it in my sketchbook as well is so nice. I keep opening my sketchbook and it's just there in front of me, and I love all the textures. I love everything. Even the mistakes. I just think it's so fun to have those challenges, to figure out how I'm going to overcome things. I loved even just the smell of the alcohol markers and the sound of it on paper. It was so nice, and I've missed it so much. I have purchased a new arm clamp, so the next video I promise will be the right way up. Let me know what you guys think on this topic. If you have any thoughts, opinions, if you feel the same, if you disagree, please let me know it all. I'd be very interested to hear what other artists or anyone else who wants to share their opinions on this. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to follow along on my art journey, and hopefully we'll see a lot of improvements within this next year or two. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!